everyone. My name is Kelly Francis. I'm the Executive Director of Calculated Genius. We are an engineering nonprofit here in Chicago dedicated to helping underrepresented youth connect to and explore the world of engineering. So, with that, we provide STEM enrichment programming, scholarships to females who are pursuing engineering degrees in college, as well as mentorship and support for both men and women who are interested in exploring the world of engineering. Um, we have lots of different programs that take place throughout the year, workshops like this, where we really just look to connect students to appropriate resources to help them along in their journey, even if they decide that STEM or the world of engineering isn't for them. We think they're really just skills that will take them into the 21st century and will help them in any career that they have in the future. Before we kind of get into tips, I did want to share just kind of a little shout out for last year. We provided $40,000 in scholarships.
Kelly, you went on mute, I think.
Oh no. So this year it will likely be the same, where we will be providing $40,000 in scholarships. So I will kind of pass it along now to Kevin to do his introduction, but we are really excited to be here and share any tips that we have with you.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. Debbie, thank you so much again for putting on this amazing second workshop. My name is Kevin Banks Jr. I'm the founder and CEO of Just the Right Amount LLC, which is a scholarship coaching and consulting firm with the goal of helping students be able to minimize or negate the need for student loans in order to go to the college of their dreams. So my story really starts. I'm a graduate of Lindblom Math and Science Academy. From there, I ended up going to the Milwaukee.
So are you able to watch this, Tiffany?
Sorry, I think we got somebody unmuted there. But I ended up going to the Milwaukee School of Engineering where I majored in biomedical. However, over the course of my time as a senior in high school and then ultimately through my 4 years of undergrad, I utilized over $175,000 in scholarship money to pay for my engineering degree. However, I did have about $25,000 in student loans when I graduated, but that is much less in comparison to a lot of my peers that had 50, 75, or $100,000 in student loan debt. And so through that experience, I wanted to leverage how I can take my experiences, the good and the bad, so my wins and my losses, and provide that to the next generation of students. And so Just the Right Amount LLC was born out of my experience finding and winning scholarship dollars. So I'm here today to provide you all with the best tips, best practices that I'm seeing in the industry right now, and especially for those juniors to really get you to start looking at scholarship opportunities differently, not as a way for you to just win money to go to school, but as a way for you not to have debt when you go to school and graduate. That's something that I'm sure a lot of you may be hearing, whether you be seniors or parents or juniors, is that America has over 45 million people that owe collectively $1.7 trillion in student loan debt or more. So why should you be one of those people that adds to that statistic? And so I'm going to be here along with Kelly from Calculated Genius and Debbie from the Chicago Engineers Foundation to help provide you with the tools necessary so you're not a statistic in that way.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Kelly. And I will take just a moment and tell you about Chicago Engineers Foundation. We are not just a scholarship provider, but our organization is a student-centered group. Our mission is to encourage and empower the next generation of engineers here in Chicago. Our scholarship program is our main program and our way to help students as they work towards achieving their engineering career goals. On an annual basis, we provide up to 100 awards to students. They're awarded each June. And in addition to awarding our graduating high school seniors here in the city, we also have a renewing program where once a student becomes a CEF scholar at the graduating high school senior level, they can continue to receive awards from us through 4 years of undergraduate education, which comes to about $5,000 over 4 years, with our first award for our graduates from high school being $1,000. Like Calculated Genius, our award cycle is currently open now. And like our peer as well, we have an online application, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this at the end, about our opportunities for you to not only consider Calculated Genius as a potential scholarship provider, but also Chicago Engineers Foundation. But we're going to really be talking about all different types of opportunities to seek engineering or STEM related scholarships, as well as just some wonderful hints and tips from my peers as well as myself of ways you can again set yourself apart as a scholarship applicant. And with that, we're going to jump right into our topics. We're going to be dividing the afternoon into some scholarship tips of all different categories right at the top. And then we're going to go into building your network now as a future engineer. We're going to talk after that about different opportunities, summer camps and internships and things that one may want to seek now while you're still in high school to, again, help build up your presence and your interest in engineering. And finally, we'll do a Q&A session at the end. And feel free throughout today, if you have a question, feel free to throw it into the chat or do the raise hand little symbol. We will get to every possible question that we can, so that we're making sure that we're covering all the topics you want to be hearing about today related to scholarships. And so with that, we're going to jump into our first topic, and we're going to talk about research. And when we talk about research, we know Calculated Genius and Chicago Engineers Foundation, we are definitely not the only scholarships out there. There are tons and tons, and it's a matter of finding the right fit and making sure you're finding all the right fits that might be out there for you. And so Kelly, we're going to start with you. What are some tips you would give to students who may be considering looking for STEM or engineering related scholarships? Where would you start?
Yeah, so I think one major resource that is available to Chicago Public High School students is the CPS Academic Works website. CPS Academic Works, it's pulled together by the CPS Scholarship Manager, Michelle Howard, who is absolutely fantastic at going out in the community and connecting with organizations like CEF and Calculated Genius and vetting them. She does all of the hard work for students. So I would definitely say use that tool to your advantage. You're able to look at the scholarships that are available, the upcoming deadlines, really kind of source through and look through there. The other is to use your friend Google and type in scholarships and whatever demographics might apply to you. In high school, I knew that I was going to be studying Spanish. And so for me, I kind of used that scholarships for Spanish majors, and type in any demographic that you think applies. If you're really good at sports and you're looking for maybe a sports scholarship or a scholarship that caters to students in that particular field, search that as well. And then the third is scholarships.com. This is just a place that a lot of providers advertise their opportunities. So definitely utilize that as a way to use their search bar and type in upcoming opportunities, even for like the state of Illinois being a way that you could field down to students that are in Illinois. How about you, Kevin? What other thoughts do you have?
Absolutely, Kelly. You hit a lot of great points there. CPS Academic Works is a phenomenal tool. I wish it was around when I was a senior, because that definitely would have cut down a lot of my research time. I'm a little old school because my experience was doing it by myself. And so I think absolutely typing in on Google what your particular demographics are. So if you're a Black male prospective engineering student, type that in. There are scholarships for you there. If you're a white female looking for scholarships at the intersection between maybe a foreign language and engineering, definitely look for those. If you're a Hispanic male or female student that's looking for programs specifically for you, there are scholarship opportunities specifically for students that find themselves to be Latinx or of Hispanic descent. So it's very important that you find scholarship opportunities that not only meet where you are in one area, but as many areas as possible, because those are called niche scholarships, excuse me. And so those might have less people applying to them. The other thing you could do is for a lot of the major scholarships, and this is for my juniors that are here, if you apply for a scholarship like Gates or Coca-Cola or Jack Kent Cook or McDonald's, they'll have references to other scholarships on their website as well. Take a look at those and see if you meet the requirements for those, because then that can start you getting and gathering that additional information. So that way it takes you less time to find additional opportunities that you may be eligible for as well.
And that's something we do as well at Chicago Engineers Foundation. If we always tell our students, if you're applying for us, apply for everything else that you qualify for. And so we actually maintain a page on our website, and I've just put that into the chat, where we list as many vetted scholarship resources that we can find that are engineering related. We may get interest from a particular scholarship provider. And so if it fits within engineering, we will put it up on our website. We'll have a link. They all, of course, have different requirements, different deadlines, different everything. And so we encourage students, whether someone might be a good fit for a CEF award in terms of eligibility or not, check out that page. That's where I always send students, because there is so much on there that goes out within and outside the borders of Chicago, might go Illinois. Some of them are national. There's also links to even more, like US News and World Report has an amazing array of scholarship opportunities, and some are they used to have a page that was engineering related, and so we have a link to that page as well, just so that we're offering page after page after page of resources. So if Googling is getting you down, if you've gone through Academic Works, this is another avenue that you can definitely look towards. In addition, like Kevin mentioned, look for those niche scholarships. We hear from a lot of different providers in the city, especially like engineering associations, like the Society of Hispanic Engineering Professionals and the Patent Attorneys Association of Chicago. They have scholarships that nobody knows about, and they might get 5 applicants and they have a ton of money to give away. And so we list all of those, as many as we know, on our website, but definitely think about those as well, and Google some of, like, put in Engineering Association Chicago. They'll all come up. They all have websites and Facebook pages and stuff like that. Take a look at their scholarships. Again, little known awards, but there's quite a bit of money. There's several pots of money there that are available to engineering majors who are going into school.
Another place to search that just came to mind is if your parents or guardians work for a potential or a particular corporation. A lot of times they have specific funds for the children or guardian children of employees. And so that is definitely a place to look. I know Pepsi has one, Coca-Cola. So just researching any particular corporation that kind of might have a tie to you is a good way too.
Absolutely. And so we're going to move into our next topic. So you found all these scholarships. Let's say you found like 24 that you want to apply for. How do you keep them all straight when they have all different deadlines, all different requirements? What do you do? And so we're going to talk a little bit about deadlines. So what are some best practices you can use, or your student can use, to create like your basic your own personalized scholarship app or calendar to keep you going? And so Kelly, what are some tips you have to make sure that a student is keeping up with all those deadlines and all those requirements?
Yeah, so I definitely think utilize a tool that works for you. Back in the day, I literally had a printed calendar that I would kind of plug in key dates for things. And I do not like to be late for anything. I'm normally very early. And so I would always give myself an early deadline. So even if an organization said that their application deadline is April 16th, which is our deadline, I would tell myself that it was April 10th, so that for whatever reason, if something happened during those 6 days, I was prepared and still in on time. Nowadays, what I recommend is having a digital tool. So utilizing either, Google Excel or Excel in and of itself as a way for you to track those deadlines, and then filter based on date. So know that the most current deadline is top of mind for you.
Absolutely. And to add to that, Debbie, so Kelly brings up a phenomenal point. And so when I had to do it my senior year, I had an Excel spreadsheet with 80 or 90 different scholarships by the time I graduated. And so I would filter it out based on the month. So I would put in all of the scholarship information. I'd even have my username and password for the website, because sometimes I may have to use one that I'm not used to using. So I didn't want to lose track of that information and have to lose valuable time. And so I would keep track of everything there. And then what I would also do as an additional step is write it in my agenda. So Lynn Bloom, we got an agenda as a part of being a student. And so when I would write in my physics homework or my calculus homework or my engineering homework, I would also write in what scholarships I was writing in as well. And so on a given night, let's say it's a Tuesday night and I've got a scholarship that's due, 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, I would be working on that essay 2 or 3 times in that first week and then send it over to somebody to review that second week. And then by that third week, it's okay, now I'm trying to close out this application. Let me get it in. To Kelly's point, additionally, as well, what I tell any student that I work with is for online applications, you should really set a personal deadline for a week before that application deadline is due, just in case life happens. You don't want to be one of those people that's trying to submit it the night before and the website crashes and then your application doesn't get uploaded. Or you don't want to be one of those people that something comes up with school, you forget, and then now you just missed out on $5,000. And then for paper applications, which I know we're sort of going away from in the age of COVID, but there's still some organizations that do it, I highly recommend a 2-week advance deadline. So if it's due on April 16th, for example, turn it in by April 2nd. Why? Because you never know. They may start reviewing your application early, and that may be favorable to you in terms of being able to receive that award or not. But it also just allows you to be able to, in case life happens, let's say you wrote down the wrong mailing address, 2 weeks gives you time for them to be able to send it there. It doesn't get there, and then it comes back to you in the mail and says, hey, address is wrong. Then you can go ahead and modify it and get it off to the right organization before that deadline comes up. So I definitely recommend setting personal deadlines as well.
And to build on what both Kelly and Kevin said, I'm someone who likes to, and I've seen students do this, and I think it's a great idea, to have more than one way that you're keeping track. So if you are an Excel person, um, try using Google Calendar, or if you have like an agenda through school, use more than one resource. Sometimes I find, especially right now when we are virtual and there's things hitting us from all different ends computer wise, it helps to have multiple sources telling you, oh, you've got a deadline coming up. And I think it's so important too, and we've seen this in the past with our student applicants, waiting until that midnight on that day to get it done. A lot of times providers, scholarship providers like ourselves, we can't control once a system closes, we can't pop it back open again. We have to be fair to everyone who was in our system by the deadline. So if you didn't get your uploads done or you didn't hit submit, I can't go back in and add you later if you forgot to put something in. And so think of that as well, that if there is a deadline, there's a reason for it. We have to start our review process with all of our qualified applicants so that we can start figuring out who's going to get our funds. But B, it's because our system doesn't allow for that. Or if you do have to do paper applications, like Kevin said, you have to allow for mailing time. If something has to be in the hands of a provider by April 1st and you're mailing it April 1st, it's not going to get there. And so definitely think about, with all those paper ones, if you have things you have to send, those need to be done at least a week, though these days, probably a week and a half, if not 2 weeks before, because we know that the postal system is having some troubles right now. And so make sure if something's due April 1st, it better be gone now if it has to be mailed out to the mail, so that you make sure it gets there as quick as possible.
On that point, some scholarship providers that have like the mail-in option, if there's a phone number or an email, I would also say ask if it could be dropped off. So that leaves kind of the error of the poster service out, and that it was physically turned in to someone. And they might even respond, you know what, we'll take an electronic version this year, but at least you asked, even if it's no, and you're able to just take any potential errors out. And the other thing I wanted to note, that for those that are kind of going a digital route and using an Excel spreadsheet or Google Docs, is to note on there whether or not the scholarship is specific to incoming freshmen, or if it's something that you could also apply to in the future. And then use this document as a resource later on. So even those that are juniors on this virtual discussion right now, you're ahead of the game, because you could be doing research now to prepare yourself for next year when these applications are due, and you won't miss out on applications that were maybe due in December or earlier on. And so you're really at a really great place in time to be able to start on the right foot.
I would like to add, Debbie, before we move on to the next topic. So I have a statement and then a funny story. So the statement is on the CPS Academic Works. If you go to the Overview and Resources tab, there's actually a link that will take you to the Google Calendar that CPS Scholarship Manager Michelle Howard uses, and then you can sync that with your calendar. So then that way you'll have those scholarship deadlines built in for you as well. The funny story I have to Debbie's point about if there's a, or it was either Debbie or Kelly that said, hey, if there's a phone number on the application. So there was one sorority scholarship I applied for, Sigma Gamma Rho in the Chicagoland area. And I was running up on the deadline. It needed to be mailed in, postmarked by a certain date, which is the other thing, right? So if a scholarship provider says it needs to be in their hands by a certain date, that's different than it needs to be postmarked. If they say postmark date, then as long as you get it in and mailed off and make sure that they do the stamp at the post office for that date, then you're good. But if they do say it needs to be in their hands, you definitely want to allow yourself those 2 weeks. But back to the funny story. So the scholarship, sorority scholarship, was due by a certain date. I ran up against a timeline crunch because I was working on a couple. Come to find out, my sister went to school with the son of the person that was running the scholarship organization. So what did she do for me? She called that son and said, hey, my brother's trying to apply for this scholarship. Can you talk to your mom? Is it okay if he drops it off? They ended up telling me yes. I was able to drop my application off at the scholarship coordinator's home in Beverly. And that was actually one of the scholarships I ended up winning. I was the only male student that won that scholarship that year because I guess all the other male students in Chicago thought because it was a sorority scholarship, they couldn't apply. And so I was up there at the award ceremony with 6 other young ladies, and I was the only male to get it. So that speaks to the power
That's
of
awesome.
research, calling, emailing if you have any troubles, because these scholarship organizations want to give out this money. And so if you show yourself to be diligent and show yourself to be somebody that is reliable, even if things do happen, right? Life happens. But if you're able to follow up and follow through, that could lead to some great results.
And Kevin brings up actually the lead into our next topic where we're going to talk about requirements. What, how do we follow the best, what is the best way to follow different requirements for scholarships? We all have different deadlines. We all have different uploads that we need to see. As an example, Chicago Engineers Foundation, we do not require letters of recommendation. We'll take them as it'll give a little extra information about our applicants. But other organizations do require them, though we at CEF require other things. And so let's talk about a little bit about knowing each requirement and the best way to follow and make sure that we're getting all those requirements done before we submit our scholarship applications. Kelly, what's some advice you would give?
So I think first is just to honestly admit that looking for scholarships can be seen as a part-time job. It's a lot of work and it could be stressful. But I think reading through different scholarship listings and just quickly identifying if it's worth your time is really important. So for the Calculated Genius STEMinist Scholarship, we only provide scholarships to females who are pursuing engineering degrees. So if you happen to be a male and you look at our scholarship, you know that this isn't one that would be a fit for you. But then I think too is just, I quickly read through, I have a checklist, and for me it's columns in my Excel spreadsheet. Do they require a letter of recommendation? Do they require high school transcript? What about a college admissions essay? Is there, or not essay, sorry, a college admissions form letter? Is there an essay requirement? And then maybe copy and paste what the topic of that essay is, or the prompt that they have. And so those are kind of things for me. And then I would just go down the line when I know that is the next scholarship that I would be working on, is to make sure that I see all of those points. And then also just understanding that different providers have different systems. So like Debbie's system at CEF, you could go back in and work on yours, where mine, you have to complete it all at one time. So just kind of understanding those different things, I think will set you up for success.
Definitely. And if I can add to that, so when I was doing the scholarship journey, I didn't realize this, but in a lot of cases, there may be opportunities for you to get bonus points. And what does that mean? So if, for example, and I'm not going to name any names, but if, for example, a scholarship organization says resume is optional, that may be a section where you may have some discretionary points given to you. And so what does that mean, right? So anytime you apply for a scholarship, you have to realize that there's going to be a score given to it. It's just basic. It's the way that we as engineers and we as people that want to make a binary decision, yes or no, are able to do that. So it's from a numerical perspective. And so when you think about anything that goes on your scholarship application is going to have a score associated with it, you need to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. So if they tell you that your essay needs to be Times New Roman, 12-point font, double spaced, please do it, or else you're either going to lose points or disqualify yourself in that particular section of the application. Now, if you're a 4.0 student, phenomenal SAT score, but you don't have any community service, well, that may hurt you on the community service section of the application, right? So the whole point in applying for scholarships is to present the most well-rounded version of you. And so what does that look like? So you may be a 3.25 student. You may have a 25, 26 ACT. I know we're in the age of test optional. So if you don't like your ACT score, you feel like it could have been better, but it was, I would say, in that 24 and above range, and that organization says test optional, I would put your ACT or SAT score on there because you may get some bonus points there. But then you also will have to complete essays. You'll also have to complete listing your internship experience potentially or your community service hours. Please, if you have something that fits every category, put it down because you're increasing the opportunities you get to maximize your points necessary. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to a decision, it's going to be how many students meet our minimum threshold to move on to the next round. And you want to give yourself every opportunity necessary to meet that and or exceed that. So you go from one round to the next, or in some cases, it may be one round and done and you receive the scholarship. So that's what I would say as it relates to requirements. If there's anything on there that's optional, if you have it in your ability to do it, include that thing that may be optional because you never know, it may give you a leg up on your competition.
And to build on this, definitely when you think about requirements, if you come across a scholarship, an application where you do, it does have different requirements than like three other ones that you're doing, I highly recommend whether you have to fill it out all in one setting or you can autosave, look at them in advance before you fill them out. Open them up and just take a look at them as a blank. And if you're using a spreadsheet or a piece of paper, and figure out, do you meet these requirements? The Chicago Engineers Foundation scholarship application, we have qualification questions at the very beginning. And so you'll know if you're answering yes or no with us, whether you meet the criteria in terms of living or going to high school in the city of Chicago, a graduating high school senior, planning to study engineering in college, and attending a four-year university. Those are the things we look for as the basics of eligibility for our award. And so I would tell a student, if whether or not an application has qualifying questions like that, ask yourself those qualifying questions. Because in the end, if you're not a good fit, that's okay. Because as we talked about earlier, there are a lot of different opportunities, pots of money out there for scholarships. And so if you're not a good fit for one, you're going to be a good fit for another one. And so feel free to pass on it and move on to the next. I find kind of like with scholarship applications, and I think my peers will agree, if we get an application for someone who's really not a good fit, they're probably not going to get evaluated. For us, because we receive a lot of applicants and we have so many to go through, if someone doesn't meet our eligibility rate at the beginning, they go in the other pile. And we find that a lot of our peer scholarship providers will do the same. In addition, something you may want to do is, if you don't have to fill it out all in one setting, if it does autosave like ours happens to, go in and out a couple of times before you hit the final submit. And again, don't wait till that last minute. You may find that you suddenly have a letter of recommendation you can upload. You may have created a resume you can put in there, again, to get those bonus points like Kevin talked about. So definitely take your time if you can. If you allow yourself the time and you're planning your calendar, you're going to have time to go in and out as you need to, if that's allowed by the provider, and really hone your application and make it awesome.
I'm sorry, Kelly, did you have something? I'll let you
I
go.
was just going to say, for providers that do not have an application system that you can go in and out of in the past, I would also print the application, like if you're able to, and fill in where you have the documents or the information necessary, and then you can kind of work on what's maybe missing.
And I don't know, Debbie and Kelly, feel free to respond to this, but one anecdote I want to tell the students about requirements is if you meet all of the requirements but one, and you feel like, hey, this is a great opportunity for me, apply. I recently was speaking to a mentee of mine, and he was telling me he applied for one of the McDonald's scholarships, and the one requirement he didn't meet was being Hispanic. And he was still able to receive the scholarship award because he met every other requirement. Now, I know that may be a gross example, but there are some instances where you may be able to get past a lot of the other requirements, and you may still be a very strong applicant, but you might miss one thing. And that scholarship organization may say, you know what, he's better, or he or she is better than the other pool of people. And also their story is compelling. Let's give them this one. Kelly, Debbie, I don't know how you all feel about that, but I think that's something to note for the students as well. If they meet all of the requirements but one, and you feel like you can make a strong case, maybe take the opportunity and apply.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that one area that I think scholarship providers might be a little bit more lenient in these times would be GPA. So we don't require students to submit SAT or ACT scores, but we do ask for a minimum of a 3.0 GPA. But in these times, we're understanding that this is just a difficult time for students in schooling. And so that is one area, as Kevin said, if we had a student that came in at 2.89 or a little bit under and they met every other requirement, we would still review their application.
Yeah, and for us, for CEF, so some of our qualification eligibility requirements are set in stone in terms of living or going to high school in the city of Chicago, planning on studying engineering. Four-year university is pretty set in stone, though we have had a couple instances where we've had a student who was in, it's called the Engineering Pathways Program through U of I and the City Colleges of Chicago. That particular student was going to be entering a two-year college, going to Wright, with guaranteed acceptance to U of I engineering if he met that program's eligibility requirements, which were more strict than ours. So for us, when we received his application and we contacted the other program and figured out that he is heading towards where all of our students are heading towards, we included him in our slate of candidates 2 years ago. He's now entering U of I this fall. So he has continued his progress. So that was a change for us. We'd never funded an award for a student heading to community college, but that was the exception to the rule. So definitely, and the other thing too, to throw out there, and I think Kelly and Kevin will agree, all scholarship providers, usually within their application or somewhere on their website, we have email addresses, or you may find a phone number. Feel free to reach out. We definitely don't bite. We encourage, if a student or a parent, if they're really just not sure about a requirement that's in our application or some language in there that just isn't quite fitting, or you're not quite sure what to write, feel free to reach out anytime. I talk to students via email all the time now, and some are a great fit for our organization and our program, some are not. And if they're not, I'll give them other resources so that I'm not leaving someone hanging. And so definitely feel free, as you're finding these different providers, don't be worried about asking questions. They may say don't call or email after you submit, but in this pre-time, when before our cycles are closed, we want to know that our students understand what we're putting out there. If our applications aren't clear, if our directions aren't clear, if something's not working, or you just aren't quite sure if you fit, we want to hear from you so that we can then A, improve our communications going forward, and B, make sure that we are a good fit for you and the things that you're looking for in a scholarship.
Absolutely. I think one thing that unites a lot of scholarship providers is we're looking to be a resource to students, whether if it's not financial and we could support you in some other way, we really want to do so. And so no question is stupid, and no question should go unanswered. We definitely welcome them.
Absolutely. And so we're going to transition into some providers will ask for outside documents. And a lot of times what you'll see, and you probably see this with college too, you'll have people ask for letters of recommendation or they'll ask for a letter from, maybe it's a teacher or a pastor or something that really speaks to who you are from someone who's not you, so that you can kind of set yourself apart in that way. They want to hear from more people aside from yourself when they consider your application as a well-rounded one. CEF, we no longer require letters of recommendation, but we like to see them because, again, it adds that extra level of getting to know you. And so the question becomes, when you are seeking a letter of recommendation, and I think this is one of those years in the age of this ongoing pandemic, how do you get your letters of recommendation? What should you ask for? And so we're going to talk about that for just a moment, for when we do need to seek those outside documents to put in our applications. What are some great ways to do it to ensure you get those things on time and you get what you need for your application? Kelly, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for our application, we look for letters of recommendations from a teacher, a counselor, or a community supporter. So my top tip is find someone that knows you well. If you are a soccer star and you have had the same soccer coach for 3 years and they kind of really know who you are and can speak to your values as an individual, approach them and ask if they would be willing to write a letter of recommendation. But the first tip is someone who knows you well and they like you. They know the skills that you have. Definitely go to them. If you're looking for a teacher, I would choose a teacher that has taught you recently. So maybe they know if this year has been particularly difficult for you, ways that you've excelled. And then the last would potentially be a teacher of a core subject. So maybe one that has had more interaction with you.
Those are all great. Those are all great things. One thing I would add, and I was looking for it as well, because to this day, I still have all the letter of recommendations I've used for either college or scholarships on my flash drive. And my senior year engineering teacher, who I had junior year and senior year, in the first line, he wrote, and I'm quoting, so forgive me if I misquote, but he said, "I want to supply my highest letter of recommendation to Kevin Banks." And then that very next line underneath that was, "Kevin Banks is one of the top 2 best students I've ever worked with in class." And so the reason why he was able to say that is because he saw me in a very high pressure environment. He taught us in engineering class very religiously. He was not one to mince words. He set hard deadlines, and if you didn't meet them, too bad. And so what he was doing was he was really showing us what the engineering life could be like. He was an engineer in the industry for over 30 years. And so just to be able to have somebody like that to write a letter of recommendation on my behalf, not just once, but he gave me a blanket letter of rec and said, whenever you need it, print it out, bring it to my office or put it in my mailbox. I'll put it in an envelope. I'll sign it at the bottom, and then I'll also seal it and sign it on the back. So those are things that you can leverage with it when it comes to your scholarship applications, when you have good relationships with people and you show them that you are a quality student, which I know all of you on this call are. So for my seniors, if you haven't already secured letters of rec, it's not too late, but you definitely want to give them as much time as possible. For my juniors, start thinking through who those people could be. So one thing I tell the students that I work with is you want letters of rec that speak on 2 different things, either your longevity in a certain area or your leadership in a certain area. And if you can get both, even better, because that's what scholarship organizations are looking for. Hey, how long have you been involved in the community in one capacity or another? Or if you haven't been involved that long, what has your leadership experience been like? Has it been meaningful? Has it been impactful? And then of course, if you can combine both, even better. So you definitely want to have teachers that you can call upon for that. You want to have community organizers or community liaisons. I think Debbie used an example of a young man who received a CEF award that built a basketball court in conjunction with his alderman. His alderman would have been a great person to write a letter of rec if they didn't. If you are involved in a sporting team, right, and you're captain of your basketball, football, track team, I was captain of my golf team. So, if you're captain of that team, you definitely want to get a letter of recommendation from your coach. If you started a school club, you definitely want to get your faculty advisor to do a letter of recommendation. And then also just having anywhere from, in my opinion, 4 to 5 different letters of rec that you can use at any point during your senior year. What that allows you is then being able to tailor your letters of rec to your application, right? So for example, CEF values students that want to become engineers and that have a desire to give back. So for me, it was important that I use my engineering teacher and then my pastor in my church, because my engineering teacher can speak to my engineering capabilities, and then my pastor can speak to how well I was involved in my community and things that I've already done that will then showcase how I can do in the future with CEF's award. So when you have multiple letters of rec that speak to various areas of who you are, you can then be able to pick and choose which one presents the best version of you for that particular scholarship application.
Those are awesome tips. Two other things that I had thought of that I just wanted to share is make sure that you ask in advance. So if a deadline is fast approaching and there's a new teacher or a new counselor or somebody outside of someone that you might already have a letter of recommendation from, um, maybe that's not the best person. But I think if you have enough lead time, that is definitely someone that you should look to. And then the other is whoever writes you a letter of recommendation, they're really doing it because they like you as an individual. If they say yes, they are willing to kind of put their expertise on the line for you. So I would say drop them a thank you note. It's just something nice to do after the fact, keep the relationship going. And who knows, maybe in the future there's someone that you'll circle back for and either speak to a class or talk about your skills with. But it's definitely someone that you want to keep a good relationship with.
Definitely. And for the seniors, I know it's crunch time and you all are doing e-learning. It's not too late, but you definitely want to give whoever you're going to ask, if you haven't requested one already or you're looking to request a different one, as much time as possible. So if there's a scholarship like CEF, for example, that's due in a couple weeks here, you might want to ask that person today, as soon as we get off this call, or even email them now while we're on the call. So you can give them as much time as possible. For my juniors that are here, we talked about mapping out what scholarships you may want to apply for. Over the summer, start asking people for letters of recommendation. That'll give them enough time to be able to do it, especially because we don't know if you all will be virtual or in person. That'll give them plenty of time to write a quality letter of rec. And then also what that'll do is then you'll be able to start gathering those things that you need for that application early. So then you can go ahead and submit those applications early as well.
And to build on what's been said too, I know when I've been asked to do letters of recommendation, and our award recipients will ask me from time to time, even if I do know them pretty well, I always consider it an honor. I just think I am so enamored by the fact that they consider me to be someone who will speak on their behalf, and that's where, like Kevin and Kelly both said, giving that extra time, it continues to make it an honor for whoever you're asking. If we have to dash something off the night before, or we have to run to the post office and have it postmarked by such and such date, the honor gets a little tarnished. We'll still do it, but will we put the absolute best of the best together? I really enjoy personally writing. I don't like stock letters of recommendation. I won't say so and so is great. They are a wonderful student. I will go and talk about how we know each other. I will say how long I've known them. I'll put in if I know something additional about that student, I will want to put that in there. And I like the time to do it. I think it makes for a becomes that great honor, and B makes for a better letter for you as the student. And so definitely make sure you're giving that extra time, and let the person know how much you appreciate their time as well. If we do them, whether it's a teacher or a counselor or a scholarship provider, we spend a lot of time on these, and so definitely show your appreciation. Like Kelly said, give out a thank you note after, prior to, as you're asking, tell them what you're applying for as well. That you're applying for a Gates Fellowship, you're applying for a CEF award, and why you're doing it. It'll help to us be able to craft the right letter for you again, so it doesn't look like a stock letter. Letters are always good, no matter if they're, especially if they're required, you do need to have them. But if they're not required and it's something extra you're adding to your application, give them the time and give them the information to craft something just right for you and the relationship that you have with that person. So let's talk a little bit. I think we're going to move towards, because we're running out of time, essays. Everyone asks about essays. And so we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to talk about what it takes to make that essay that's just going to get you those bonus points and set you apart from your peers. Kelly, what's some things you like to see?
So I think the top one is making sure that you're actually answering the essay prompt. Every prompt is going to be different. Some will have you either, speak about your skills or the degree that you're pursuing and what you want to do in the future. So definitely read through the essay prompt. And this is your time to shine and to brag a little bit. One thing that I think of is looking to maybe key people in your life, either a best friend, a parent, a guardian, aunt, uncle, and asking them their thoughts on what makes you different or stand out, and then utilizing that in your essay to show how you shine. So for us, we also provide engineering degrees, and for students pursuing computer science degrees, we would like to hear, like, what are they looking to do in the future? How could they utilize this degree, and how a scholarship would help them get there? Maybe without scholarships, they wouldn't be able to go to school. That's really important to know. Maybe they support their family and siblings. Share that. This is the time for us to get a better glimpse of who you are as an individual. And so talk to us like we're human. Everyone that's kind of reading your essay, they are human, and we want to find a way to connect with you. So if you could start off with a story or a way to capture us in, those are things that I think are important.
Definitely. And to add to that, so everybody's going to have their view of what makes quality writing. But I think at the core, it's telling your story and being authentic to who you are, right? Whether you've got a great one-liner or you have a phenomenal closing, just telling your story and being authentic to who you are is gonna wow the reader, especially if you have a compelling story that you can tell. So for me, as a senior in high school, the first week of my senior year, two of my grandparents passed away, and then my mom got sick with an autoimmune disease. So I got really good at telling that story because that story led me to majoring in biomedical engineering. So by the time I was really applying for scholarships, I had people drilling me on my story and making sure that I was telling the story the right way. Did it evolve? Absolutely. That story was not the same in October of my senior year as it was in April because my view of that story changed, or it evolved into something better. And so I could see a stark difference in my essay of that particular story from April to October. And I still keep all of my essays now. And the other thing you definitely want to do when it comes to writing a quality essay is get support. So I dropped a link for DePaul University. They have a free writing support service that Michelle Howard, the scholarship manager, always references. So feel free to put it in. I think they turn around essays within 2 to 3 business days. So that's definitely an area of support. Also, I know some of you may have phenomenal students in your classes that are great writers. Ask them to look over your essay. If you don't have a parent or a sibling that can do it, maybe an aunt or uncle. There was one point during my senior year where I had 5 or 6 people looking over essays for me at one point or another, just because I was working on that many essays at one time, and I really wanted to make sure that I was getting some quality support so I could get a lot of these scholarship applications done. So there's opportunities out there, and if you all build a good relationship with people like myself and Kelly and Debbie, I'm sure we wouldn't mind reading over an essay or two for a separate scholarship opportunity as well, because we see what quality essays look like, and we can give you some tips and tricks to help you bring out that quality essay.
Absolutely. And to build on that as well, going back to kind of the points we've been hitting throughout, taking your time, doing maybe using a Word doc or a Google Doc and opening that up to start writing your essay. The other thing, and we find this with CEF because our essay prompt is engineering focused. If like Kelly said, if the prompt is the prompt and you write about something else or you copy and paste from a totally different application, it's not going to fit. And so for our purposes with CEF, we have 3 different volunteers, 3 different engineering professionals read over every single application. And we take their reviews and we kind of put them together and do the average and all that other fancy stuff in the background. But they know what the prompts are. And so if they're reading an essay from one student and they're right on the point and they've got the punctuation and the word count and the grammar and all the different things we're asking for, they're going to, of course, get a higher score from someone who maybe possibly took their Kiwanis scholarship application and kind of placed it in. We can tell the difference, you know. And so definitely make sure if you are doing a little copy and pasting, I'm not saying it's wrong, but make sure it fits the prompt. The other thing I can't emphasize enough, and I know my colleagues have said it over and over again as well, and we're just going to say it one more time, to proofread is to be even better, especially some of us are using our phones, maybe you're using a tablet or something with a touch screen to fill out your application. Autocorrect is not necessarily your friend when you're doing an essay. Things will jump out at us if you tried to write engineering and it came out as elephant. And so definitely make sure you're taking the time, even if you aren't able to autosave as you go. If you're just doing your essay, like copying from a Word doc into your application, make sure all the words came out correctly. If you're using an ampersand, that's going to come out weird. So use and instead. Check your punctuation. Check if you're using you have autocorrect or spelling check or something like that. Make sure everything makes sense. Read it over a couple of times yourself before you send it. Even in addition, if someone look at it, it's amazing how the eye wants to autocorrect when you're reading something. Your brain is going to autocorrect it sometimes, and so folks may miss things. If you have another person reading it, read it over one more time yourself before you hit submit. It will save you from having to put out the wrong word elephant instead of engineering. And that's an example I use because I've seen it. So definitely take a minute and make sure that you are ready to go when it comes to your essays.
And I think those tips are really transferable to your overall package. Proofread is your best friend. I can't tell you the number of students that we had the incorrect email address. And yes, I know that gmail.com is supposed to be gmail.com, but that could be something that could eliminate you. I'm nice enough, I go back to any individual where I see something that is incorrect, and I will ask them to either edit it if there's time or resubmit, but not every application is the same. And I think you've gotten a ton of great tips here, but the one is to really know your audience and proofread. Make sure you double check before you hit submit, because that will be the best thing that you did.
And so we're right up on time right now, but before we go, we want to make sure that we're answering your questions. And so feel free, unmute yourself if you'd like, or you're welcome to use the chat and tell us what you'd like to know that we didn't cover today. How can we help as you are working towards your scholarship journey, or maybe you're on that path right now? Some things we didn't get a chance to cover yet, and again, feel free to unmute yourself or raise a hand or throw something in the chat if it has come to mind. Um, we didn't quite get to talking about different associations one should be looking towards and different opportunities like summer opportunities and things like that. And so definitely check out some of the resources we've put into the chat today. And again, we are recording this conversation so that you will have all these resources, and we'll be sending this out to everyone who RSVP'd today. There are some great summer programs. Kelly, I think, can talk about hers, and then we'll talk about a couple more. And again, feel free if there's any other questions or comments we can provide, throw them into the chat as we cover this for just another minute or so. So Kelly, talk about your summer program.
Sure. So Calculated Genius has a 6-week summer program that is actually kind of the intersection of engineering and entrepreneurship. So our founder, Kimberly Moore, is an engineer and entrepreneur. Her firm is KDM Engineering in the city. She's a phenomenal rock star, someone I definitely think that you should look into. But so based on just her journey of entrepreneurship and her background in engineering, we put together this program that will allow students to think through and build out their own entrepreneurial idea to solve a problem in their everyday life, while throughout the course of the summer also learning different engineering concepts, working on hands-on projects, and meeting engineers and professionals in the field.
Awesome. So now we are over time, but that's okay. We will hang out. Are there any other questions or details that we can provide as you are working on this journey that we call scholarship? All right. Well, I cannot thank enough my partners here, Kelly Francis with Calculated Genius and Kevin Banks with Just the Right Amount. We have had a blast just sharing everything that we know as scholarship providers and as scholarship receivers. And we do have a question here. Will scholarships, hang on just a second. I just lost the question.
It said,
Specify if they're
yeah,
for 1 year or multiple.
yes, they will.
Yes, that's a great question. So we, as CEF, we are a renewable award. We will put that into our requirements. Those who are for high school seniors, or maybe they're for undergraduate students only or whatever, they will put that. And if you're not sure, again, feel free to reach out to the provider. We love to hear from potential applicants so that we know and they know if they're a good fit or not.
This year, Calculated Genius has the opportunity to provide one student with a recurring $5,000 award for their 4 years in school from a super generous donation. And so ours actually is not being advertised because it is going to be reviewed. The top applicants will be reviewed, and that donor will be selecting who that student is. So they will be, so I think, pleasantly surprised when they received the news because it's not a low dollar amount, but that's just one opportunity.
That's awesome.
Wow, we got some insider info here today, everyone. That's awesome, Kelly, what Calculated Genius is going to be doing for their students.
Debbie, if I can just add, I know we're closing out, but for the students that are looking to go to engineering, which I'm assuming is quite a bit, if not everyone, definitely look into organizations like the National Society of Black Engineers, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, Society of Women Engineers, Society of Automotive Engineers. There's so many societies, but they'll usually have scholarship opportunities for you as well. You may have to be a member of that organization, which is great to do as you go into your college career because it definitely will provide a great networking opportunity for you. But there is money that you can get for a scholarship from these organizations. I am a witness of that because I received 3 NSBE scholarships, 2 from a region and 1 locally within the city of Milwaukee where I went to school. And then I also am a CEF award alum as well. So you definitely want to capture as much money as you can. There's never a such thing as too much money when it comes to paying for school.
Never.
And those associations, I mean, to join as like a NSBE junior member or a SHIP junior member, they aren't high cost associations to join, and it becomes a network. It becomes a network of peers who may be going to different schools, but you all have something in common, and it's a great resource for events and opportunities to just build your presence beyond high school, beyond college, and really keep that network going as you continue down your path towards becoming an engineer or wherever your education may lead.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us on this lovely Wednesday. As Debbie and Kevin both mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We're willing to share our tips and tricks, be an extra set of eyes, or even for us to put some of our volunteers on a project. I would say more than a handful of them would be willing to review an essay if they were asked. So definitely, take the opportunities to seek out organizations like ours for additional support.
And we look forward to seeing if you are filling out applications, whether with Calculated Genius or with Chicago Engineers Foundation, or you're looking for consulting advice with Kevin's organization, Just the Right Amount. We look forward to seeing you. We do remember names. And so definitely reach out if you can, if you'd like. We would be more than happy to speak with you. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully as future award recipients with our organizations.